the more truthful insights you have about life, the higher you move in the frequency. And the higher you move in frequency, the more truthful insight you will have about life. And today I'm going to talk about one of these insights. And the insight is basically how to spot toxic people and what to do with them. And also in relationships, how that translates to relationships. Okay, that should be almost like 2 or 3 separate videos, but I'll try to give you a rundown of something that you might never have heard of before. So there's a neologism, a term I coined, which is called toxic metaframing. And toxic metaframing is a result of a problematic energy that is happening in your body or someone else's body, and I'm going to explain it. So, in a sense, the vital force that we experience as life is coming a lot from the sacral chakra, from the second chakra, or the Eastern would say it comes from the hara point, so below the navel. There's a lot of energy there, life energy, chi or prana. And when that is suppressed, when that energy is suppressed, or when there's a lot of instability in the body, then the person becomes unhappy. There's no joy, and there's also no sexuality. And when these kind of two energies are missing, either one of them, then the person, if they're not conscious enough, they start to project this unhappiness onto others. So they start to criticize other people or put them down in order to get a short relief of their current psychoenergetic field deficiency. So for example, let's say there's a partnership of 2 people. It doesn't have to be a partnership. They could just meet on the street or on the internet. It doesn't matter. And if, say, in a partnership, one person is deeply unhappy, without joy, without sexuality, and they might be interested in someone else, then what they will do is they will start to shift the blame of their unhappiness onto the partner. So they will, for example, say, you never do anything right. You always do, and then this kind of derogative way they will try to put the other person down. And this kind of dynamic I call toxic metaframing. And there's verbal, non-verbal, direct and indirect toxic metaframing. Now, someone who constantly toxic metaframes is a narcissist. It's actually what a narcissist is. He believes, or she believes, he's more important, his words are more important, his emotions are more important, his life is more important, his thoughts are more important, his whole beingness is more important than someone else. And when that is coupled with this deep-seated unhappiness or unsexuality, then they will very vehemently put someone else down. And you will notice it in what I'm saying right now. If you understand what it means, you will notice it in every bad relationship. It's the common ground in every bad relationship. And you will notice that it pops up as kind of like a lot of times like a generalization which is put over the other person in order to push them down. That's why I call it toxic metaframing. And the highly conscious person or being, instead of projecting it onto the other person, can look back on themselves and say, okay, I'm not in my happiness, I'm not in my joy, I'm not in my sexuality. What can I do to get into that joy or sexuality and thereby release myself from the projection and fix my own problem? So, and in a couple, there is a very good technique which I'm definitely going to expound on in future videos, all of these things, because it's not easy. If people listen to it for the first time, they don't immediately get it. But I already changed a few people's lives completely by explaining it to them. And my life completely changed because I can recognize toxic people within minutes, and then make a decision on how I deal with them. And couples, for example, what they can do is separately, they each sit down separately and they write on paper what would give them joy or sexuality, sexual energy at that moment. And they do that separately. And then when they come together, they can see what they can do together in order to experience that joy or sexuality. And you will see that if they can come together on some points and experience those points, then they will immediately, the whole dynamic of the relationship changes. And the opposite of toxic metaframes is actually short, authentic, real compliments. For example, honey, you did this very well. It's like the acknowledgement. And that goes back also to my container theory, that someone who has a broken container or is very unconscious is not able to hold the energy of the other person and return it in a constructive, polarizing way. So, what's going on here? So much noise. I have to leave this place. There's way too much noise here. It was late yesterday. So, when you understand toxic metaframing, you can completely change your way you deal with people. One thing that I have to say, which is hard to swallow, over 90% of people in modern society are toxic metaframers. And the reason is because a lot of people in themselves are really unhappy. They're not living to their highest joy, to their highest sexuality. And when that is firmly understood, you can move to other areas, which I call, for example, lifestyle design, where you design the life that you want, incorporating joy and sexuality, and thereby having very good days almost every day. So we're gonna talk about this sometime else, because that's it. Now I'm opening a Pandora's box, and you have to understand first the basics. And if I go into the very basics, is basically most people are only in survival and procreation. They're not aware of themselves being as consciousness, as pure consciousness. So all they do is within this area of survival and procreation. And that's 99.9999% of people out there. And only when you become very conscious of the processes that are going on, you can start to take control, because otherwise you will always be in the fear of procreation and survival. And toxic metaframing in itself, with the libido empowerment, that means the opening of the sacral chakra, is basically... No, I forgot what I wanted to say, because there was somebody running around and looking into the van. Suddenly there's so much going on, and it's what is it today? Sunday. I guess a lot of people have time now. Yeah, let's talk about how to deal with toxic metaframers once you spot them. By the way, for example, a lot of women know this one. Like, if a woman looks at you and she's like, that's a non-verbal direct, for example, toxic metaframe. She's trying to put you down in this way. So toxic metaframing in itself needs a huge masterclass that I need to upload here, but because there's also nuances within it. But how to deal with a toxic metaframe? There's three options. Either you over-toxic metaframe, which is typical, which most people do. So men do this a lot, but women do this a lot, just in different ways. So you say, for example, you're stupid. No, you're stupider. No, you're much more stupid. So it's just kind of the over-toxic metaframing. And that always leads to violence in the end if it's not calibrated. It's actually the source of all wars. And the second option is to explain to the person what they're doing, that they're missing kind of this joy and sexuality in the sacral chakra, and that's why they're doing it. But that only makes sense with people that are highly conscious. So someone who's already on the path of becoming more aware, and you're, for example, in a very conscious relationship, and you can reflect it to the other person. Very few people have that capacity for that container. Very, very few people. And the third option, and this is almost always the most intelligent one, is cold turkey cut physically with them. And the reason is also when it's a continuous toxic metaframer, there are narcissists. And narcissists are inherently narcissists because they're unconscious of their own behaviors. But they're very, very perfect. They know the dynamic unconsciously, instinctively, perfectly. So they do push-pull, gaslighting, blame shifting, all of these kind of things. They know very, very, very well how to do. And by the way, there is no toxic person that is not a toxic metaframer. A toxic metaframing is inherently connected with being a toxic person. And once you understand it, you will spot it everywhere. It's like an eye-opener. It was a huge eye-opener for me and a lot of other people that I explain it to them. And it allows you to get out of partnerships that are only serving your codependency, meaning your inadequacy or your superiority. You're kind of like this dynamic is bouncing back and forth, and it's actually making you sick because you're not really enjoying sexuality. So, for example, when the couple comes back together and they find some points that they want to do together, then, like I said, the energy shifts. And I have a good example for this. When you have a child and you promise the child to do something, for example, you take them to eat their favorite ice cream, they will immediately fall into this kind of excited joy state. It's literally the sacral chakra opening and activating all of that energy system. Yeah, let's do it. And the child hasn't even gotten the ice cream yet. But already that joy, because it's coming from the sacral chakra, I call that libido empowerment. So could also call it sacral chakra empowerment. When the child then becomes a teenager, it splits into sexuality and joy. But before it was just joy, very basic, simple joy. And then it splits into sexuality and joy. But it comes originally from the sacral chakra. And it's an emotion very easy to feel, especially if your root chakra is fine, it's opened, and it supplies basically the if it supplies the sacral chakra when everything is open, then that energy already starts to flow. There's nothing super complicated to it. And if you want to have good days for yourself, in order to yourself to be in this high state, you only have to close your eyes for a minute and be like, what would give me now a lot of joy? I have to leave this place. I hate when cars drive by. So I'm just going to finish the video and then find a place to... Okay, let's talk about joy. A lot of people also continue in situations which don't give them joy for either... I speak several languages, so I'm sometimes I have a word in another language. For laziness, for complacency, for comfort, but they're sticking in this situation which doesn't give them joy, and because of comfort, they stay in it. So sometimes you have to exert a little bit of energy, like I in this situation, and find a place that I prefer staying in. And that's a very, very important learning. So sometimes you have to exert a little bit of energy in order to put yourself, your body, your psychoenergetic field into a joy situation where you feel more comfortable, where you feel more yourself, etc. And you will save yourself sometimes years and years of time, sometimes 20, 30 years of time. There's so many relationships that are in a sense toxic. They're not truly about love. And they've been going on 20, 30, 40, 50 years. but the people never escape it because they're fearful, they feel powerless to give themselves the joy. So, and that goes back to self-love, of course, and all of this. So all of the things I talk about are very much interwoven. And when you start to listen to my videos, as more they come out, you will see how it's all interconnects. And I have a book, a free book, that where a lot of the concepts are explained. I'm still continuing on some chapters, but I definitely announce it over here. The book is already downloadable, but I'll announce a little bit later here. And you will see how everything is connected. And so I'm going to give you now a couple of simple examples of toxic metaframing. I hope that I come up with some right now. So one of the simplest one is, you will never amount to anything. You're stupid. You're always doing it like so-and-so. And sometimes it's also the way they're saying it. And Jesus, you're like your mother. Jesus, you're like your father. I don't know. Whatever. But one must be very careful, and this is another dynamic that I have to explain. This is something that I didn't write in the book yet. I have to do this. Is the originator of the toxic metaframe is the perpetrator. The responder, the victim, even though they might respond with a toxic metaframe, are not the perpetrator, they're the victim. So if I tell you, you're stupid, and you respond, no, you're stupider, I'm the perpetrator, not you. Okay, so that's super important, because the narcissist will even use that and say, well, for example, the narcissist toxic metaframes you in a chill way, but it's still toxic. And you respond with anger, and then the narcissist says, what's going on with you? What's your problem? You know, that's also very typical. So, yeah, so that's one example. Then there's let's say a non-verbal, let's say, for example, you're super nice to someone and they're just starting to ignore your messages instead of having clear communication. On online, it's kind of difficult, but because there can be many other reasons. But in general, especially if you know the person a little bit more and they do this, they're playing with you in that way. It's a toxic metaframe. Ghosting, for example. Although you have a relationship, if they suddenly ghost you, it's a toxic metaframe. Because they believe their time, their energy is more important. But there's nuances to it, and you shouldn't The thing is, over time... Shit, are there many cars here? Okay, I'm leaving this place. I'm gonna go into self-love and find the right place now. So, there's more videos gonna come out. It's gonna totally blow your mind once you start to understand it. Just take in what I just said now, and you will see how it completely changes your life. And once you understand to spot it, the thing is, you will spot it everywhere. There's like 90%. And then there's 10% of people who don't do this. And you have to focus on the people who don't do this. The people who don't toxic metaframes are just a boon to be with. It's like really comfy. But you must check yourself that you're okay. And then it goes back into that container theory. You give the energy, you look how it comes back. You give the energy, look how it comes back. How do you process this? How do they process it? And you move higher in that frequency. And it's much easier. It sounds like you're not investing in someone else when I see this, what I'm going to say, but it's much, much easier than, rather than worrying about what they do, raise your frequency, lose your fear, and everything else comes automatic. If they match your frequency, fine. If someone else pops up that matches that frequency, fine. But don't get stuck. So the higher you go in your frequency, the more everything aligns with that frequency. And it literally works. It's amazing. And also, one of the reasons I wanted to do this toxic metaframing video today is explaining it, is because a lot of internet people are libido suppressed, and they toxic metaframe in the comments. And I just received one of the first comments. No, actually, it's the second toxic, and you will recognize it more and more. And I say, as we go into the future, where people are glued to the screens, their social life is worse, their unhappiness is growing, so they go online and toxic metaframe more and more and more. So you see a lot of toxicity raising in society. In some countries even, for example, in Germany, they insulting someone is illegal, especially if it's a deep insult. But in general, it's illegal. And talking about freedom, but when in the past, there would be maybe 20, 30, 40,000 of lawsuits with insults in Germany, and I think it already reached like 300,000 or something per year. So it went up a lot. I would have to check the numbers exactly, but I know it went up a lot. So a lot more people feel insulted by others. So there's a lot of kind of tension, but that's everywhere. It's just, I know the statistics from there. I read statistics from everywhere, and you will see that. That's why also modern society feels so weird, because very few people are coming from the heart chakra. Very few people are in alignment with their joy and sexuality. They're all suppressed. And sometimes there's good reasons for it. Your body isn't functioning. It's constantly inflamed because you're eating the wrong things. You're under stress. Your job is requiring a lot of stuff, a lot of tension in the relationships. The children are more obnoxious because they watch too much social media. So there's a lot of things, and it needs conscious effort to flip that script. And that's why also a lot of people feel the need to move into nature, to feel the need to escape the city, because they don't know, they cannot dissect exactly what's going on, but they can instinctively feel something is not right. So, and I call this lifestyle design, to be super aware of what's going on, and then creating a life that, we could say, counteracts modern society and unconscious living.